We were fully expecting to have 10 teams to talk about today, but the Warriors and Knicks, they extended their series last night. Two very interesting Game 6s are on the way. But today we're going to give some takeaways for the teams that have been eliminated from the NBA playoffs. Of course, we're going to give our TAP Player of the Week and maybe a PSA or two. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Bakari Steve. How you doing on this Thursday morning?
I am upset that the Lakers couldn't pull off their Game 5 win. I want nothing more in life than to see the Warriors lose on their home floor and be eliminated from the playoffs. But that will hopefully Hopefully that won't have to happen again because they won't make the playoffs.
We'll talk about that a little bit later here. But this is your early reminder to support us. You know, we're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. Go ahead and support us over there if you do have an account. And if you have some time, we greatly appreciate any and all support. But without further ado, we have some quick news to cover first, give our TAP Player of the Week, and then we're going to get into the takeaways. This is the Anomaly Podcast. Let's get into it. We're going to start here with NFL opening day. It's going to be Lions, Chiefs, Thursday, September 7th, 8 o'clock Eastern. Two exciting teams. You know, the Lions this offseason, they've made a lot of contending moves, and they've really bolstered up their roster. They're going to be looking to take down the defending champs there in the opening day of the season. The Chiefs, not to mention they have the best player in the game. I will say that defending champs usually don't fare well in these opening games the following season. But who do you have early on? Lions, Chiefs in Arrowhead?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Chiefs. I think even with the moves that the Lions made this offseason, it's still, I don't know. Me personally, I don't know. It's just a little crazy that that the Lions are playing in prime time, let alone opening day. But, I'll take the Chiefs in that one.
Yeah, very exciting team. The Lions, I mean, I think they're going to be a team that a lot of people see could be sneaky, like, Super Bowl contenders this year. It all just comes down to their quarterback play to me, and if Jameson Williams can stay out of the gambling books.
Yeah.
But moving over to Anthony Davis, you mentioned it in the intro, kind of. But Chris Haynes, the reporter last night for that Lakers-Warriors game, he said that AD avoided concussion protocol, but the decision is out of his hands. It is in the doctor's hands of the Lakers staff. If they say he's ready to go, he'll be playing in Game 6 tomorrow night. The Lakers will be at home. Is this finally when we see LeBron turn into that second gear that we've been talking about? We know LeBron's he's been playing good, but we know that he has another gear. Is this the game that LeBron opens that up?
I'd say yes, but it probably won't equate to a win, only because the entirety of last season and pretty much this season too, the trade deadline, LeBron, he was in that second gear. He did have to average basically 30 points a game just to keep this Lakers team afloat. And it was never enough. He needed Anthony Davis. He needed the support around him, and if he doesn't have Anthony Davis, this Warriors team, even though they're on the decline, they still have more than LeBron will have without AD. Even if LeBron does throw up 40 points, I don't think it'll be enough to beat this Golden State team if they're hitting on all cylinders.
Right. I mean, I'll never put it past LeBron to come out and have that vintage performance where he blows the Warriors out the water, right, and single-handedly carry this Lakers team to that point. But they're gonna need some people to step up. They're gonna need Rui, Austin Reeves, maybe Lonnie Walker to all have probably about 15 plus. And maybe Mo Bamba gets some PT here in this game.
I guess he's hurt with an ankle injury, so he was like he may be ready to play next round if they make it.
We'll have to see. But I
don't know how you hurt your ankle sitting on the bench.
Would then have to ask you, if the Warriors win this Game 6 tomorrow night, is there any chance the Lakers survive Game 7? We know the Warriors are terrible on the road, but they also have the biggest road win on the season to date, as they went into Sacramento, one of the best home teams, and Steph Curry put up 50. If they win this Game 6 in Crypto Arena, formerly Staples, right? Do the Lakers have any chance to win Game 7?
I do not believe so. Whether you like it or not, this Warriors team is the defending champs. They still have Steph Curry, who's the greatest shooter alive. You still have Klay Thompson, who's the second greatest shooter alive. You still have. We saw Draymond give a vintage performance in the scoring department last night. We saw him play like it was Game 7 2016. He's coming back from a suspension. But I don't believe that the Lakers will win. The only game that they've looked good on the road was that Game 1 Other than that, the Warriors have really looked in control. And yeah, they've had everything going for them. Those last 2 home wins the Warriors had, they blew them out. And then last night, it was like nobody could miss. But I do believe that they win a Game 7 only because of the home court.
Right. And I mean, what a coincidence, Warriors, I mean, no team's ever blown a 3-1 lead in the finals. LeBron was the catalyst of that Cavs team that made history. Now it's reversed. Obviously different setting here. The LeBron's 39 years old, no secondary star, but what a coincidence that this Warriors team might have the chance to come back come back down 3-1 against the guy who did it to them on the biggest stage. But I need the Warriors to win. I need the Warriors to win, so my Warriors in 5 prediction doesn't sound as crazy. But moving over just to the overall other series, we'll start here in the West. We might as well finish it off as Denver and Phoenix. Denver won Game 5, and they're up 3-2 going back to Phoenix. It's very hard to win Mile High, but if the Suns can win tonight at 10 o'clock with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, do you think they win Game 7? Chris Paul should be back for Game 7. He's already been ramping up. Who would you have in a hypothetical Game 7?
Actually, if Chris Paul doesn't play, I'd probably lean more so towards the Suns. But if Chris Paul plays, he slows the pace down a little bit too much. Sometimes the Suns don't get into their actions until there's a little bit of time left on the shot clock, which kind of forces, Devin Booker or Kevin Durant to throw up a shot here and there. Chris Paul, he's going to take a few of his shots as well, and he doesn't really shoot good from the field. So if Chris Paul plays, I'd probably choose the Nuggets. Just because obviously we've seen this entire series, Nikola Jokic has been unstoppable. There's nothing the Phoenix Suns bigs can do. We saw the type of play that we got elsewhere, or the Nuggets got elsewhere from the team in Game 5. So I'd probably lean towards a Game 7. Like you said, it's hard to play in Mile High, but we've seen Kevin Durant come up big in Game 7. We know Devin Booker's been on a all historic scoring run these playoffs, so I wouldn't put it past those two.
Yeah, I think Denver probably closes it out tonight. But if it does go Game 7, I'd probably have to go with the Suns just for the firepower of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I mean, it could be too much for one of them to go off on you. When you have both of them putting up 30, you're going to be in there for a long night for Denver. But Game 6 tonight, Denver might move on to the conference finals. Boston and Philly, another game that it's probably the most surprising game of the playoffs to me, to see that Philly dominated Boston. Boston got booed off the court by their fans, but Game 6 is tonight. Philly's at home, and they have a chance to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's say Boston loses. How does that affect Jaylen Brown to you? He's eligible for the Supermax now that he's an All-NBA player. Would you trade Jaylen Brown, maybe get some secondary stars? I know Colin Cowherd had the insane trade that surfaced out there, but I'm not asking you to give me a trade package, but if you're the Boston GM, would you move Jaylen Brown? He's been rumoring to get out there. Would you move him to get some complementary pieces around Tatum?
No, because Jaylen Brown is a complementary piece around Jason Tatum. There is no better Robin in the league. On 85 to 90% of the teams in the league.
Well, maybe LeBron.
Well,
but I guess that's two Batmans.
Yeah, that is two Batmans. That's
or Kevin Durant.
That's like
Devin
Batman.
Booker?
That's Batman with a temporary Robin and Anthony Davis and those guys out there in Phoenix. That's like Spider-Man and Batman. They're not from the same universe.
Right.
But Jaylen Brown, he is the best secondary player in the league. 90% of the teams, he's the star player. We know what he can do when he has a team by himself. And to be honest, I think Jaylen Brown covers up a lot of what Jason Tatum lacks. If the Celtics lose a game and Jaylen Brown doesn't play well, Jason Tatum doesn't play well, but Jaylen Brown does, Jason Tatum really doesn't get a lot of the blame. I think Jaylen Brown takes a lot of the slack that Jason Tatum should feel. And if Jaylen Brown was to lose, it would be amplified for Jason Tatum. I don't think we would look at the Celtics as a top seed contender or a contender as much unless they go get, like a secondary star, who obviously won't be Jaylen Brown. But unless Jaylen Brown has told the team, yes, I'm going to walk away, then, I guess you could look for a sign and trade. But even then, you would have to hope that, I guess he would sign that extension so he could get traded. But I wouldn't voluntarily say, here, you can have Jaylen Brown for, Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons. Like, I wouldn't do that. Last year we saw Jaylen Brown was in the Kevin Durant trade talks. I think Kevin Durant is like, he's probably like one of 3 players you can actually trade Jaylen Brown for, and not, feel like you didn't get anything in return. So
yeah, I mean, to me, Jaylen Brown's one of those guys that you could trade for. He's in the perfect situation where he can trade him for a star, a disgruntled star. And the biggest name, you mentioned some Portland players, but the biggest name to me is this finally Damian Lillard's way out? To Portland, they get Jaylen Brown, who can spread his wings, be that superstar for them. Maybe like a James Harden, where he's a secondary guy. He goes to a team that's his own, and he really flourishes. So I could definitely see a Portland move there, or we know. Now this would be, we would need some complementary pieces in this deal, maybe some draft picks. But Bradley Beal is another guy that
Bradley Beal is not better than.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that Bradley Beal and Jason Tatum grew up in St. Louis together. They're good friends. Maybe they can work out something like a Chris Tapps is a free agent, like a sign and trade. Chris Tapps and Bradley Beal for Jaylen Brown some picks, or maybe just Bradley Beal and some picks for Jaylen Brown. I think both sides would be interested in that if it really came down to it, where you had to trade one of them, or trade Jaylen Brown, right? But
I think
that's just an idea.
I'll ask you this, because like I said, I don't even believe Jaylen Brown will really interest or give the Celtics any interest this upcoming offseason. I think he'll look everywhere but Boston again, especially the way he feels like he's been treated later down the stretch in games, and even I'll even say, like, even last game where he crashes down on Embiid because Embiid is dominating Jason Tatum on that post up, and then he comes down as soon as Embiid is about to shoot, Embiid passes out, and then he scored. That's Jaylen Brown's man. Now he has to own up to losing the game for them when it wasn't his fault. He wasn't. It's not like he was losing game from them intentionally. Do you think Damian Lillard? I don't think a 35-year-old Damian Lillard would be better than a 26, 27 just entering his prime Jaylen Brown. Damian Lillard definitely isn't a better defender, and then you would have to hope that he's durable. Do you think that he would fit in that Boston system better than Jaylen Brown, who we all know that Boston system is a defense first, offense come later?
I think absolutely. I mean, for a guy that dropped 71 points this offseason, he's only 32. Dame, as we saw last season, he's still probably in his prime, right? I mean, you put Damian Lillard. Let's say, I don't think Boston would have to give up any complimentary pieces for Damian Lillard. Would you have a rising superstar like Jaylen Brown, maybe a first round pick or two, or maybe some pick swaps. But I think it could just really be a clean swap where Portland's paying the supermax for Jaylen Brown, and Damian Lillard comes to Boston. So if you have Dame, Marcus Smart, when you have Dame, like you said, he's not the greatest defender, but it comes down to effort. And I think when you see him in a winning situation, his effort's going to be there. And even, I think you can hide him, in most cases when you have the All-NBA defenders that Boston does have. And I think, if anything, it makes Boston more dangerous. It takes away defense, but when you add a guy that can really make Tatum a secondary star, and when Tatum wants to be inconsistent, he can do that. And Damian Lillard's still going to pull you through. I mean, we see him pull these poorly built Portland teams to the playoffs. We saw him do it for years and years. I think if you put him on this team that's so complete that Boston is, it's going to make Boston probably my title favorite.
Wow.
I think going into next year, when you have Damian Lillard and Jason Tatum, two guys that can give you 35, and I mean, Damian Lillard doesn't cover the defensive side of the ball like Jaylen Brown, but offensively, he's going to pick up for whatever Tatum's lacking, nightly on a nightly basis. At least in my opinion, I think Damian Lillard is still a top 2, top 3 point guard in the league.
Yeah, I think that Jaylen Brown's value is definitely not seen now. It's definitely one of those situations he's going to get traded, and then people are going to realize he was really covering up for. Because I am a Jason Tatum fan. I was a super fan of Jason Tatum, and I don't know. Even these games, he's having 39 and they'll lose, or it just doesn't feel like one of those magnificent performances. I mean, he's a super. I mean, people have him in that superstar tier. He has gotten better on defense, but he's not. He's not the defender that Jaylen Brown is. And like I say, he Jaylen Brown covers up for a lot of the inconsistency and a lot of the problems that Jason Tatum does, and that's because Jaylen Brown is also a wing player. I think if you swap that out for a point guard, there are going to be different problems that await. Now you have to go get somebody who's going to spread the ball. Damian Lillard, he's a score first point guard. He's going to go get his before he does anything else with it.
I think it would work perfectly. To be honest, when you have Marcus Smart and then Marcus Smart doesn't ever guard point guards. It seems like he's been guarding Embiid for a lot of the series. It hasn't worked out the best, but Marcus Smart's usually guarding the wings, the superstar wings, and because he can really get into them. I think it just would work perfectly having Dame alongside with this defensive team, and the roles are going to be set. You're taking Dame and Tatum. You guys go get us the points, go get us all the points, and then. For Tatum, he's not a slouch on defense, and you know that. He's still an all-NBA level of a defender. He's not Jaylen Brown defensively, but I was just saying that if it came down to where Jaylen Brown kind of demanded a trade, or he was like, look, I'm leaving you guys, you could do a sign and trade, whatever, because I was here for so many years, I think Damian Lillard might be their best option. That's all I was getting at there. But basically, I just want to ask you this. Philadelphia, they're in a beautiful situation. I think if they win tonight, they're going to have a lesser conference opponent than any team in the West. They're going to be a home court team against anybody in the finals, aside from Denver. Philly, right now, they're in a great situation. If they win tonight, do you think they win the finals? If they win tonight, they're going to be facing either a beat-up Heat team that's been exhausted or a starless Knicks team who's going to be a gruesome Game 7 there if they can extend the series. And then they're going to be facing a team out the West, who the West has been stacked all year.
If Philly wins, I think they win the finals if they play anybody except the Lakers. Anthony Davis it feels like he always goes crazy on Joel Embiid, and then you're asking LeBron to cancel out a very inconsistent James Harden, who's either going to get you 40 or 15. And then it's just role player play. I think Austin Reeves. Or I know Tyrese Maxey, I guess he's more so a little bit more of a role play. You don't really count him as a role player, but
he's in that he's in the middle there.
Yeah, I think that'll be the X factor in that series. Outside of that, I think guys like Dennis Schroeder, Austin Reeves, even Rui did not play good last night, but I even think he's better than the role players that Philly has to offer. So I think the Lakers will beat Philadelphia if that comes down to it, but we all know if Denver makes the playoffs, I think we all know that Embiid usually always goes crazy on Jokic, and I don't really see the Suns hanging in there just because they don't. We see what a passing big man is doing to DeAndre Ayton. Imagine if you get somebody down there like Joel Embiid, that's going to be barbecue chicken. And Golden State is just. I don't think they stand a chance.
I would give my opinion on that, but hey, next Tuesday's show, we're going to have the third round predictions, as by then we're going to have all these series pretty much wrapped up. The only other series that is to mention is Miami and the Knicks. Jaylen Brown played every single minute in that game 5. He had a crazy game, almost a 30-point triple-double, and he extended that series. Any chance they win Game 6 tomorrow night?
Not if Jalen
Brunson. It's back in Miami.
Yeah, and not if Jalen Brunson has to play 48 minutes again. I don't think I think you played all your cards to get one more game in this series.
Yeah,
I agree that the Heat close it out, and
Kyle Lowry, 35-point triple-double incoming.
Crazy.
I call it right here, but maybe a little overzealous, but. Tap Player of the Week, I'll give you the floor, as this guy has the craziest stats for a week-to-week basis that we've seen yet.
Yeah, it is Nikola Jokic. That is the Player of the Week this week. He had that 52 points in Phoenix this past weekend. We know that Nikola Jokic usually passes the ball. Here are his averages. It's 37 points, 11 rebounds, 13 assists on 63% shooting. He's 1 and 2 during that span, but the fact that we're seeing a more aggressive Nikola Jokic, I think, when it comes to scoring the ball. We know he likes to get his teammates involved, but the way that he's been able to dominate these Suns big men are the reason that they are able to have a closeout game tonight. You could argue that they shouldn't have even dropped those 2 in Phoenix, and they could have swept those the Suns. But Nikola Jokic, he was MVP candidate this year for a reason. He's a back-to-back MVP. There's nothing much more to say. I think all he needs to add to his resume is a finals appearance or a ring. If he does that, you're cementing yourself in NBA history.
But moving over here, as 20 minutes in, but we're going to get into our takeaways. These are the 8 teams in order of seeding that have been eliminated from the playoffs. Coincidentally, we have a 1 through 8 seed. One of every number has been eliminated so far. And we're just here to take, takeaway. Maybe it's a prediction or what they should do in the offseason or just what we've seen from this season, right? And we're going to start here with the biggest shock, right? A team that if they were still in it, I'd have them as my finals favorite. The number 1 seed, the Milwaukee Bucks, lost in the first round to the Miami Heat, as we know. My takeaway for them is that there is failure in sports. I'm going to give you the stage as I want you to go ahead and give your thing. As I have a PSA for, in my opinion, the best player in the NBA.
Yeah, for me, the Bucks, they need to find a fresh face. And when I say a fresh face, they need to find a head coach who comes in and has to just commands everybody's attention, almost like a Ime Udoka was for the Boston Celtics. I understand that is a crazy analogy considering we know what happened to Ime after one season, but if under that Mike Budenholzer tender, it just kind of felt, I don't know, phased out. It kind of felt stagnant after a while. We saw the year that they won a championship. They practically stood no chance to a Nets team that didn't even have James Harden. It was just Kyrie and it was just Kyrie and Kevin Durant. Kyrie goes down, and Kevin Durant is still able to take them 7 games with his next best player being Jeff Green. They kind of just happened to get one that year. I understand that you need a little bit of luck to get a ring in basketball. But at that one, it really felt like, because ever since that happened, they lose in 7 last year to the Boston Celtics. I understand that Chris Middleton was hurt. Then this past year, you have your full team. Giannis is out a game, or pretty much 2 games. But we've seen all year Giannis dominate, or the Bucks still dominate when Giannis doesn't play. They lose in 5. I think that it was time for a new coach to come in and kind of give a new system, give this team a new identity. A new system to run. When you look at the Bucks from now on, depending on who their head coach is, you can be like, the Bucks and whatever it is, the Bucks and 3s, the Bucks and something. They need something else.
Yeah, I'm going to start this by saying that look, I've said it all season and it was redundant, but I really believed it, and I still believe it. They just fell short in the playoffs. 1 month in, I made a video and I said this is the best Bucks team of all time. I said it about 72 times during the season in the playoff prediction videos. I really believe this is the best Bucks team of all time. But my message to Giannis, PSA to Giannis, look, we know after the playoff elimination, Giannis came to the podium and he said there is no failure in sports. I disagree. If you set out for a goal and you work towards that goal each and every day, then you fail in the manner that this Bucks team did, your season was a failure, and you're the leader of that. I understand Giannis missed 2 games in the series, but you're the number 1 seed facing an 8 seed that was missing a 20-point per game score for the majority of the series. For a team that was the betting favorite to win the finals, lose in the manner that they did, the season, again, was a failure. It'd be different if Giannis was a young player. I don't expect Paolo Banchero or Jalen Green to carry their teams to relevancy for a couple years.
Definitely not Jalen Green.
Right. But Giannis has already been to the finals. He's already been a finals MVP. And in that finals, he played historically at that. Giannis is the best player in the world, and I'm expecting him to be the MVP next season. But this season was a failure, Giannis, and you're the leader of that. But moving over, it sounded like a personal attack.
Yeah, it kind of sounded like he was in bed with somebody in the family.
Moving over to number 2, Memphis Grizzlies. They're missing a vet. I read yours. Yeah. I read yours, right? It's a habit. But for me, the Memphis Grizzlies, I know it's corny, but they were indeed not fine in the Western Conference. As we saw, they had a lot of problems there in the second half of the season. And Dillon Brooks, it came out immediately after they lost. There was a report that said Memphis has informed them that under no circumstances or under any circumstances, Dillon Brooks will be a Grizzly next season. That was crazy, to see that report.
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
I've never even seen it with the 15th man on the roster.
Yeah.
I will say that he does deserve a job in the NBA, especially if a guy like Thanasis has a job in the NBA.
Well, yeah.
But Dylan Brooks, I think,
but Thanasis isn't actually going to be the first option.
True. And this Grizzlies team, I guess, it also doesn't help. They lost a couple starters. They lost Brandon Clark. They lost Steven Adams. Two of those guys could have really changed the series for Memphis in a series, especially against the Lakers. I'm not sure they would have won, but it definitely would have made it a bit more competitive in these 6 games. But nonetheless, they lost, and his comment backfired from early in the year.
Yeah, and I like you said earlier, I said that they're missing a vet. The thing about this Grizzlies team is even if they were fully healthy, they would have kept running into the same loop that they started last year. And that is, becoming a high seed and losing in the second, or even getting into the conference finals and losing. And it would have just been a repetitive loop. And it's because that they are missing a vet. They are missing that player in the locker room who's been there, who's done that, who knows what it takes to get there, who knows who knows what to do and what not to do off the court. They're missing somebody with leadership. He doesn't even have to play. They're missing that UD. They miss it. We're seeing what PJ Tucker is doing for Joel Embiid in this Philadelphia team, and PJ Tucker is running around not even shooting a shot a game. He's out there on a running treadmill. The court is his treadmill, and he's just running on it. It's his veteranship. It's veteranship. It's his leadership. That's what he brings to the team. That's what the Grizzlies have to go out and find this offseason. And it could be one of the smallest pickups of the whole year. It can be one of those things that you just don't even look at. Like I remember, what was it, this past season, before the Cavs traded for Donovan Mitchell, it was this past season, we went out and we traded like Taurean Prince and somebody else, and it was probably our 15th man for Ricky Rubio. And I remember I got the notification. I'm like, what? Why would we want Ricky Rubio? I know about him from 2K. I never watched him. I see him in the James Harden ankle breaker. Ricky Rubio turned out to be instrumental for us. And then once he went down with the torn ACL, our season changed. Why? Because he was the vet that was molding guys like Darius Garland. I was telling guys like Evan Mobley what to expect. And we saw what his veteranship did for our team. That's what the Grizzlies need. They have a lot of young talent. They need to go find somebody who can come in and kind of take these guys and put them under his arm.
Right, absolutely. Moving over to the Sacramento Kings, a team that, unfortunately lost in the first round. They lost in 7. But to me, my takeaway from this season for the Kings is that they had a historic season, but they also had an historic finish. They made the playoffs for the first time in 16 years. Mike Brown, Coach of the Year. This team was amazing from start to finish. De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis were both All-Stars. Well, not De'Aaron Fox, but Sabonis. But De'Aaron Fox led the league in clutch time points.
De'Aaron Fox was one. He was an alternate.
Yeah, he was an alternate. Yeah, so he had 2 All-Stars. Mike Brown, Coach of the Year. First playoff appearance in 16 years. Historic season. But unfortunately, they ran into Steph Curry Game 7, and he also put up the most points in Game 7 history. And so, historic season, historic finish for me. A little bit of a jab there, but we know Sacramento has the pieces to continue to be relevant, especially at the head coach. And I think they're going to be back as a top 4, top 5 seed next year.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I have. I have built on success. We know that the Kings have been in this area where they've just been trying to build on terrible seasons, losing seasons, failure of a season. But now it's a different challenge this year, or this offseason and going into next year. It's how do you build on this success? We saw what they did. They were a surprise team this year. Next year, the cat's going to be out of the bag. Everybody's going to know what to expect from this Sacramento team. That's a high-paced offense who's going to run and gun, who's going to get the shots they want, and they're going to run up and down all the time. So now you have to go out, bring in some guys that kind of fit what you were doing this past season, who are a little bit better than the guys you had on that bench. Or even if you can go get a starter upgrade, you can go do that. I think, fortunately for them, when you have 2 All-Stars, you don't really need much more upgrade. I mean, you have guys like Malik Monk, you have guys like Terrence Davis, you have Harrison Barnes, Trey Lyles, Keegan Murray. If you can get upgrade at one of those positions, you won the offseason, because now you've already built on what you had last year. And then their challenge will be to go out and actually play that way on the court. Fortunately for them, I think Mike Brown is the perfect guy for them. I think these guys are hungry. They're probably thinking in their mind, hey, if Sabonis doesn't have a rib cage contusion, if De'Aaron Fox doesn't fracture his finger, we win this series. So for them, they're going to have that chip on their shoulder, try to show everybody that they're not flukes. and that's what's going to enable them to build on that success.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a hot free agent market for a lot of those veteran players. Maybe like a Jeremy Grant. I think that'd fit perfectly here in Sacramento. But the Cavs, as Cavs fans, this one, it was embarrassing to watch us in the playoffs there. But for me, I said mentally we weren't ready. For a team that going into a series that almost everybody had us as a favorite to beat this Knicks team, and we were going to compete with that Bucks team. Obviously, we know the Heat won, but this Cavs team coming into the playoffs, looking how great we did in the regular season. Two great defensive bigs, two great all-star guards, one that was an All-NBA player. We had questions about the 3 position, the wings, but aside from that, everybody had us as a favorite. We're facing a team that Julius Randle was banged up. Jalen Brunson wasn't a superstar, at least not until he played us. We mentally weren't ready. We played Cedi Osman way too many minutes. JB Bickerstaff got out-coached. He got coached out of the water here in this series. And if it wasn't for the Knicks going ice cold, hopefully. But if the Knicks gonna go ice cold in Game 3, we're getting swept here. So I mean the Cavs, we had a great season. First playoffs appearance since like '98 without LeBron James, but we had a terrible playoffs. I mean, we were probably the worst team that made the playoffs with how we performed.
Yeah, I would have rather have missed the playoffs than experience what I experienced as a Cavs fan. But going into mine, I'm going to try not to rant too much. We just had small market thinking. We got to get out of that. We're falling into one of those teams now that we don't have LeBron anymore. Now that we don't have stars flocking to come and play in Cleveland because we have LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love. We have to get out of the small market way of thinking, and that came and backfired itself this year. At the trade deadline, we could have went and got a guy like Josh Hart, Cam Reddish, literally, basically throw a wing out there who got traded or was
Josh Hart would
released.
have been huge.
Exactly, released during this trade deadline. We could have went and got him for cheap. We didn't do that because Kobe Altman liked the way our vibes were as a team. He liked the way that Karis LeVert had played for 3 games in a row. He felt like he built something. As a GM, he's probably thinking to himself, "Hey, I did this. We're going to ride it out. I'm going to show everybody the team I built and watch them go far in the playoffs." That completely backfired. We didn't have a 3 to speak. Karis LeVert was our best player in this series. Isaac Okoro, he was second probably best. And like you said, we didn't have our team mentally ready, and that goes for JB. We signed JB Bickerstaff to an extension, and we saw his glaring flaws last year. JB is the coach to get us there. He's not the coach to put us over. And I think unfortunately, we need to have another outcome like this season for Kobe Altman to see that. I just hope that this doesn't become a continuous thing. I hope that we don't continue to settle. We need to get out of that small market thinking. We got Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell isn't enough. We need players around him. We need to get our stars better. Jared Allen, he played scared, and you have to have a coach that's going to give him that confidence to go out there and do his job because he forgot how to do it. Same thing with Darius Garland. Donovan Mitchell, he didn't play good enough, but he owned up to it because he knows what it takes. Nobody else on this team does, and that goes for the coach as well. So, hopefully we can get out of the small market way of thinking, and if we can do that, we can become true contenders.
Yeah, I mean, it's this series was very hard to watch, and it seems like we found the formula to beat this Knicks team, and then we literally went away from everything that worked from us in Game 3, or Game 2, I believe it was. But regardless, that trade deadline killed us because we were the only team in the league that didn't make a transaction. We didn't do anything at the trade deadline,
and we were playing our best then. So I get why Kobe Altman was hesitant, but we weren't asking him to trade Karis LeVert.
Right.
We were asking him to get rid of guys like Cedi Osman or Dylan Windler, who are just sitting at the end of the bench. If you can put those two in a trade package with 2 seconds, that's more than what the Knicks got traded for Josh Hart or even Cam Reddish. We're sitting pretty in the playoffs. So
yeah. Moving over to the Clippers as the number 5 seed. Obviously, they had some unfortunate things happen to them later in the season, and that's basically both of our takeaways. Mine was that this Clippers team wasn't healthy at the right time again. For PG and Kawhi, the whole tenure that they've had, aside from the bubble run, one of them has been hurt. Whether it was Kawhi or whether it was PG, this team has never been able to get over the hump because one of these superstars is hurt, and it's just very unfortunate because this year, I mean, we both had them as title favorites. Early, prior to the season, I had them going to the finals, not winning it, but going to the finals. and they lost in the first round because they weren't healthy again at the right time. They had a great trade deadline. They really surrounded their stars with great role players. I mean, they were competing with that Suns team without both of these stars.
Russell Westbrook and Norman Powell.
I mean, Russell Westbrook had a resurgence. I think he'll probably be a Clipper next season. At least I'm expecting him to be, unless they try and run it back there in Houston. But I'm expecting Russ to be back next year, and I think they have a lot of great pieces. They just need to get over that hump and need to be healthy at the right time. Not to mention, I mean, Ty Lue is probably a top 2 coach in the league.
Yeah. What I had for this Clippers team was they need to get durable stars. I was going to just put durable stars and say, hey, PG and Kawhi have to be healthy. No, they have to go get durable stars. Paul George, he had that one really good year about 2 years ago where he got all the way to the conference finals. Right. They unfortunately lost. We know why. Kawhi tore his ACL in the round before that. Misses the entirety of the next season. Basically, so did Paul George. He hurts his elbow. And then Paul George does the unthinkable. He comes back for the play-in. They lose the first play-in game. It's okay. They play the Timberwolves, who haven't made the playoffs in a while. Paul George, unfortunately, he doesn't get hurt. He gets COVID, misses the play-in game. The Clippers miss the playoffs. Okay, this year you come into it. Kawhi, he plays the season opener, then he misses all the way basically until January. He comes back. He's looking great. He's playing great. Paul George is catching his stride. Russell Westbrook is being acclimated to the team. Next thing you know, Paul George steps on Lou Dort's foot. He sprains his knee. Next thing you know, they go to the playoffs. They look like they can get a first-round victory versus a Phoenix Suns team that was favored ever since they get traded for Kevin Durant. Kawhi Leonard mysteriously misses games. He's torn his meniscus. To me, these guys, Paul George is 33, I believe. Kawhi is 31, 32, one of those two. They're getting older. That means that they're not going to be durable. They're not going to be, we'll be lucky to see Kawhi play this many games in a season again.
Takes some longer to recover as well.
Exactly. So my thing is they need to go out and see. They need to start shopping around, see what they can get. Now, we know the player Kawhi is in the playoffs. The thing is, he doesn't play it feels like we haven't seen him play in the playoffs for a while.
And that's with load managing.
Exactly. Honestly, if I'm the Clippers, I'm looking at it. I think Kawhi is a free agent this year, or he has an option for this year. I'm looking at it. I'm saying, hey, what can we possibly bring in somebody like Jaylen Brown? Can we possibly see what he would do for our franchise, because he's going to be available. He's going to be able to take the reins. Paul George is content being that secondary player. He said it himself. He's not the Batman. He's a Robin. I don't know why he said that. But if you can go get somebody, if you can go get somebody
Kawhi
or
and Tatum?
that would be a crazy team. But I'm saying more so for the Clippers' sake. Kawhi, we know Kawhi's not really going to play. We know he's going to miss. He's not going to be eligible to get any awards because he's not going to play 65 games. You might have him for the playoffs, you might not. I was going to say if it's guaranteed you're going to have Kawhi for the playoffs, there's no way you trade him. But that's not a guarantee anymore. If I'm the Clippers, I'm looking and seeing if I can go get a player or players. It's going to have to be players, probably similar to a Kevin Durant trade package. If I can get players that are going to be there, durable, and know their roles, I think that I would pull that off, because
it's more stability. I mean, you at least know what you're getting. You don't have to worry about a guy going up for a jump shot and being out for the rest of the playoffs. No, I absolutely agree there. But moving over to the number 6 seed in the Eastern Conference, a team that we didn't expect to win a game, and they were really just in an unfortunate situation as they had to trade Kyrie and Kevin Durant at the trade deadline. But the Brooklyn Nets, to me, they have their building blocks. They can re-sign Cam Johnson this offseason. They have Mikal Bridges, who a lot of people think can take that next step up to maybe be a star in this league. They have Nick Claxton, all NBA defender there.
Claxton.
Right, so they have, decent pieces as well as some veterans there that they can build on, right? And they can, in a couple years, I mean, this reminds me and a lot of people like that D'Lo and Jared Allen, Karis LeVert Brooklyn Nets team just a couple years ago. That was super fun to watch. Actually, not a couple years. That was probably 2018. But that team was super fun to watch. It was a team of just everybody who played as a team. They didn't really have a superstar. They all just played their role, and they were effective. This team reminds me a lot of that. They're fun to watch. They have their building blocks, though. And, wherever, how aggressive they choose to be this offseason, we'll have to see. But they have multiple first-round picks. They have the young stars. I think in a couple of years they could be back to contention.
To me, they need to choose a direction. Like you said, they have their building blocks. Now it's a matter of, do you go out and do you look at trade packages to go bring in other stars? Do you go sign another star in free? Do you say, hey, Jaylen Brown, we want you to come and be the face of our franchise this offseason? Do you wait until next offseason when you have some of the younger guys who are going to be off their contracts or, expecting a bigger contract? Do you say, hey, come be the Brooklyn Nets star player? Or do you just play it patiently? Do you say, okay, we know that we're not going to win a championship. So if we're not going to win a championship, we're going to wait until we have a competent team or we're in a position to make some plunges to do that. Do you say, hey, Seth Curry, we're going to let go of you. We're going to go trade you to a contender. Hey, Joe Harris, we're going to trade you to a contender. Same thing with Royce O'Neal. Get some picks back, kind of like the Oklahoma City Thunder did when they blew up from Russell Westbrook and Paul George, because now you have your Mikal Bridges and your Cam Johnson. Like you said, even Nick Claxton, who, he can play defense. I don't really know about offense, but he can do that. Do you do that and say, hey, we're going to wait. We're going to keep our money close to the bank. We're going to stack up all these draft picks so we can splurge at the right time. That is completely up to the Brooklyn Nets. We can only sit back from our couch and wonder what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think, we've done a lot of Jaylen Brown trade talks here on this episode. I guess I got to throw it out there. You mentioned his name. Would you accept, if you're Boston, would you accept a Mikal Bridges and a first-round pick for Jaylen Brown? Would you accept that trade to pair even more defense there with Jason Tatum and that Celtics team?
I think about it, but I think the problem for me is, I think
Brooklyn
it's because,
has 18 first-round picks now.
Right.
Trading Kevin Durant and Kyrie.
Yeah.
Maybe even Mikal and 2 firsts. I just figured Mikal, he's showing flashes. It might only take 1 or 2 first-round picks to get him to Boston.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think my thing is, from the Nets' perspective, that is your best player right now. Mm-hmm. I think if you were going to trade for Jaylen Brown, I think it would have to be more so like a Cam Johnson, Dinwiddie.
Thomas.
Yeah, exactly. Like Cam Thomas, Dinwiddie, and like a Cam Johnson for Jaylen Brown.
That'd be a lot better.
Yeah, just because, like I said, you would be trading your best player you're getting a better player in the process, but then you're just going to be right back where you were before.
Right.
Now let's go find a secondary player. I think Mikal Bridges would benefit a lot if he was a secondary player as well. We saw that Cam Johnson kind of had to take over as that go-to player in games 3 and 4 for the Nets, because Mikal Bridges is kind of getting used to being that number 1 option in the playoffs. So I think if you have somebody that's there with him on that same level, it'd be a good start.
Especially, yeah, they would still have at least 4 or 5 first-round picks left.
Exactly,
to
right.
still go out there and make a big splash in a year or two if they wanted to.
Right.
But that moving over to the Atlanta Hawks, a team that has caught more slander than they're up there with the Cavs, right? They're up there with the
Rockets,
Cavs.
yeah.
And the Rockets right here on this podcast. But the Atlanta Hawks, they took the Celtics to 6, as we both predicted, I think 5 or so. So they played about as we expected them to play in this playoff run. But I guess to me, my thing with them, they had a lot of stuff going on this year, a lot of drama, a lot of trade talks. They had their struggles, but they did look better under Quinn Snyder. In the short time that he was there, is a small sample size, and this seems to be a running trend for the Atlanta Hawks. As when they bring in a new coach, they look better under that head coach, and it looks like we finally got it. We just need a year to show
Trae
off.
Young says no.
Absolutely. If this team, I think if this team fails again next season, the Hawks got to start looking at trading Trae Young.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, I don't know. To me, they did look a little bit better, at least, especially defensively, I will say. They looked a lot better defensively under Quinn Snyder.
Yeah. But mine is just they need to find locker room unity. Trae Young is the source of that. He is the reason that Nate McMillan is not a Atlanta Hawks head coach anymore. And you can say that, well, Nate McMillan, his time had come to an end. Yeah, his time came to an end because Trae Young was no longer buying into that system. Everybody, when those things happen, everybody was sided with Nate McMillan. Everybody in our locker room. That means DeJounte Murray, John Collins, Clint Capella, Onyeka Okongwu, all of those guys were siding with Nate McMillan, but because the stars player said no, they got rid of him. They bring in Quinn Snyder, who we all know Quinn Snyder is a good regular season head coach. It's the playoffs where he hasn't really, proved that he's that same coach. I don't think that Trae Young to me is not better than Donovan Mitchell. I don't think that this Hawks team is better than any of the Utah Jazz teams he had. So with that being said, I don't know what difference he's expecting coaching this Atlanta team than coaching that Jazz team. Yeah, they might win 55 games, but they may lose first round to a 7 seed that has no business being there. So
they need to move John Collins.
Yeah,
that needs to be the first domino to fall, and then see what you have to Trae Young next offseason.
Exactly. Yeah, they need to move John Collins, and they need to give. Me personally, I'm not a DeJounte Murray fan like I used to be, but I like the way he played this year next to Trae Young. I think that he can be better. That he can be a better number one option in this style of offense than Trae Young was, kind of going back to his San Antonio days. But I think like you said, I think you give it another season, see if you can build upon that. And if you can't, you get rid of the more so of a liability in Trae Young. You go see what you can bring in. It'll probably once again have to be a package of players. Maybe on the lower tier side, maybe on the lower tier to role player side. But I think you bring in a package of players for Trae Young. And see what you can do from there.
Send him to Minnesota.
Yeah.
For Rudy Gobert.
Yeah. Well, I mean, get Ant out of it. Bring
Rudy
Ant
Gobert.
home.
Rudy Gobert reunites with his old coach.
Send Ant home. Bring him to Atlanta. Come on.
I'm telling you, DeJounte and Ant.
Minnesota fans, I'm telling you,
crazy.
Trae Young is literally Steph Curry. He's just smaller. You want to do that trade.
Moving over to the lowest seed that was eliminated, a team that, again, made it out to play in. We didn't expect them to do much. We did both predict them to lose in 5, and they did. But the Minnesota Timberwolves, at the number 8 seed, to me, they made the worst trade in NBA history, as I just threw out a scenario where they can try and salvage that. But when you give up 4 first-round picks unprotected and 2 pick swaps for Rudy Gobert, that is insane. A guy like Paul George wasn't even traded for 6 first-round picks. It was 5 or so, right?
And that was in his prime, off the MVP season.
Absolutely. It's not a guy that has been a defensive liability in the playoffs, which is, if you didn't know, that's the most important time of the year. That's when you need to win basketball games. And he has been historically one of the worst playoff performers that we've seen, especially on those stacked Jazz teams. It's a big reason why that team never, I guess, made it farther than we would think. But they made the worst trade in NBA history. Good thing for them, though, is that they have a superstar, at least looming there in Ant. And, if it comes down to it, I think they move everybody but him, and they can still be in an okay situation. I think if you move Cat here this offseason or next offseason, you could probably get 2 or 3 first-round picks for him. Rudy Gobert, if you move him, well, you can't move him.
Yeah.
You got to move him to retirement. If
I don't even know if I trade Chetty for Rudy, but I mean, hey, Rudy might be able to get you 10 boards in a playoff game, so I take that over Jared Allen.
I mean, I don't know. Are the lights too bright for Rudy Gobert? They were for Jared Allen.
Well, I mean, Rudy Gobert can get 2 rebounds with his eyes closed through 48 minutes, so.
But they made the worst trade in NBA history going into this season, and it really showed. I mean, granted, Cat and Rudy didn't have the biggest sample size as they only played about 20 games together. But I guess next year we'll have to see if this team can figure something out. But I think they know for sure this season that they found their superstar, they found their number one guy, who it used to be Cat. Crazy to think that. Those GM interviews that they do early in the year, they said that Cat was the guy that they would build around most.
Yeah.
That one year. But they made the worst trade in NBA history. It's the third time I say it, and you can't say it enough.
Yeah, to me, they need to find an identity. Whether that's going to be, you're going to be an offensive-oriented team. You're going to be like the Sacramento Kings. You're going to get up and down. You're going to run and gun. You're going to shoot shots. You're going to play offense. Defense is optional. You're either going to do that, or you're going to be more so of a grit and grind like a New York team, or I'm trying to think of any teams out west that do that same thing. Most of them are running.
Houston.
No, Houston doesn't know what defense is. Houston, they don't run past half court because they don't know what the point is. But you're either going to be a grit and grind, defensive-oriented team, or you're going to be an offensive-oriented team. But the problem is you either can't have Cat for a defensive team, or you can't have Rudy for an offensive team.
I mean, on paper, I think the fit made sense. Having Rudy Gobert does everything Cat doesn't, and vice versa. But it's proven that you can't. It doesn't work.
Exactly. Rudy's too much of a liability in a lot of situations, and Cat's aggressive one game, then he goes and he sits in his litter box the next. So,
Crazy.
Like you said, I think they know now that Ant is the number one option. And it's crazy to me because at the beginning of the season when Cat was playing, and even throughout the entire season, there are games where it's like the game plan is not to go through Ant. It's like they don't let Ant be the star player that he can be, and that's baffling to me. Ant only averaged, for most of the season, he was only averaging like 20 points a game, and I was like, well, that's crazy because it feels like he's not getting the attempts he needs. He got slandered a lot for that Lakers playing game that they could have won. He shot like 3 of 16,
right?
But he proved that he can be that guy. Like you said earlier, maybe they have to get rid of Cat or Rudy. I would prefer Rudy, but they need to find an identity. First of all, that starts with a coach not named Chris Finch.
Right.
I think JB's a better coach than Chris Finch, and how much we slandered. Exactly. So Minnesota, you need to find an identity. You need to help out Ant before he wants. Ant, to me, he doesn't seem like one of those guys that's ever going to publicly say, "Hey, I don't love it here." But if you don't start getting him help, I'd say if you don't get him help at least halfway through this extension he's going to sign, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say maybe a team like Houston would take that Rudy Gobert contract because they need a couple years to rebuild there. But now that Ime Udoka's there, I don't know. I mean, Ime Udoka loves his defenders.
Yeah,
and so they can get him for cheap and also get 2 or 3 first-round picks that Minnesota doesn't have at this point. But, maybe they can, maybe Houston's a spot. I think the only team that would be desperate enough to make a move would be a team like Dallas. But I think Luka would know firsthand that he can single-handedly, single-handedly took that Jazz team out the one year because...
Well, it was Jalen Brunson and Dinwiddie. Luka got to sit down the entire series.
Right. And I mean, he knows firsthand that Rudy Gobert is not a playoff performer, and they need a big, but not that bad.
Yeah, I can go play big for Dallas if it's that bad.
Right. Christian Wood's out the door. They don't use bigs anyway. They run 5 out.
Yeah.
But that's going to do it for today's show. Today, we did a takeaway for every team that's been eliminated so far. We can also, briefly do that next week. But Tuesday, we're going to have the third round predictions. By the time from now until then, we're going to have all these second round series closed. So we're going to have a lot to talk about Tuesday and Thursday. But we also got into our TAP Player of the Week. History was made on today's show, and I didn't even mention it. We had the first ever big be the TAP Player of the Week, as there was about 6 weeks there where it was strictly a guard. I also had, we had some rants here. We had some PSAs here. Any last thoughts before we get out of here?
No. I mean, Minnesota needs to do something. Cleveland, do something. Hopefully Ime Udoka realizes that Jalen Green isn't a franchise player. We're going all over the league here. Trae Young needs to be traded. Jaylen Brown is underrated, and that's saying a lot because he is. It's like he's a perennial all-star. It feels like because
he's forever cemented with this podcast. First ever TAP Player of the Week, Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown. So
I can't wait for like a year from now when like we look back at this because I'm keeping record on all of these Player of the Weeks, and it's just it's gonna be fun to look back in a couple months even to see who's the 4th ever Player of the Week, and it's gonna be crazy to see that we have Jaylen Brown, Donovan Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, and then we have Dennis Schroeder for one of them.
Dennis Schroeder. I mean,
we're going to look back like, why was he a Player of the Week?
It's surprising to me because I forget, I don't know about you, but I always forget that Dennis Schroeder, he was that bridge point guard for the Atlanta Hawks. He was him in Atlanta. He was that guy in Atlanta. Even when he went to OKC and came off the bench for that Russell Westbrook, Paul George Thunder team. He was a 6-man. He was favored to win 6-man of the year. I can't remember who won it over him. But Dennis Schroeder, he's been like that way his entire career.
I think that was the Montrezl Harrell year.
It might have been because Dennis Schroeder had a really good year that year. Dennis Schroeder, it feels like once he went to LA and had that one bad season, it's like I watched Dennis Schroeder and watch him score like 15, and I'm like, whoa, it's Dennis Schroeder. Then I forget, he averaged like 17 and 6 in the season. So.
The Lakers put an $80 million contract on the table for him, and he declined that.
Yeah, so.
Biggest mistake of his career. But regardless, that is going to do it for today's show. Another great week in the books as next Tuesday, like I said, third round predictions as we're going to have our Final Four, so to speak, here in the NBA. But thank you for another show. Support us down below, like, comment, subscribe, share the podcast with a friend, because if you enjoy it, they're most likely gonna enjoy it as well. But go ahead and support us down below. We're on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, all of that good stuff. Support us if you have some time. That's gonna do it for today's show. I'll see you guys on Wednesday or Tuesday next week. Have a good one.